what's going on, beautiful jellyfish? It's Tracy. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time in your day to hang out with me. I really appreciate it. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about 10 staple red cards that you can run in Commander. And I'm going to be very honest and say this video was a little bit of a struggle for me to get this list together because I'm not a red mage. And I feel like a lot of the cards that I run that are red are like a mix of red and something else, but this is specifically focusing on mono red cards that you can run in Commander. And if you're new to my channel, if you've never seen one of these videos before, basically what I like to do is like to talk about cards that work in a variety of decks that if you were like trading for cards or like you're trying to build up your collection, like these are good cards that you could build, that you could buy or trade for, that would be really good to have in your collection. All right, so let's just hop into it. The first card I want to talk about is Faithless Looting, and I really like this card. I feel like some people feel like when they have to discard cards, that can be like a really negative thing. And my whole thing is, I think sometimes you are going to get like the short end of the stick with this card and you are going to have to discard cards that maybe you want. But honestly, I think for 1 mana to draw 2 cards is really good. Card's great at any point of the game. Also, another really great thing about Faithless Looting is it does have that flashback cost attached to it. So the flashback is definitely a little bit more, but one thing I really love to do with flashback in particular is kind of like cast that card and then kind of like hold off and wait until flashback, like I have nothing else to really do with my mana. Sometimes you are just going to do this and you are just going to next turn, you know, pop that off, do that flashback cost. But I find myself with a lot of times with flashback just being like, oh, I've got nothing else really going on. I always like to make sure that I'm able to remember that. So I'll put something on top of my deck to make sure I don't forget about that flashback cost. One thing too that's really good is if you're playing some sort of like artifact strategy or something like that, where let's just say you're playing like a recursion type of thing with artifacts or something like that, Faithless Looting is definitely a really good inclusion. But I think even if you're not doing that, I think Faithless Looting is still a really solid card. I like it a lot. The next card is Purphoros, God of the Forge, and Purphoros works to me in multiple things. I think Purphoros is great as a commander. I think Purphoros is great in like a goblin synergy or where you're just playing a ton of tokens. I think it just works in really anything, honestly, where you're playing a ton of creatures. Super easy to get him online. He also gives you 1 devotion in and of itself, so you only need 4 more devotion, which is really easy to do in like a monocolored deck, for example, in particular. And he pumps your team, which is great. You can do it as many times as you want to, which is so cool. So if you don't have anything else to do with your mana, you can just pump a ton of mana into him, which is great. And whenever another non-token creature, it's not non-token, so you can do any creatures, enter the battlefield, it deals 2 damage. He is super, super annoying to play against because every single time you play a creature, everybody takes damage but you, which is super cool. So, oh my gosh, Perforos, absolutely love him. He's great. Okay, let's talk next about one of my personal favorite red cards, which is Blasphemous Act. And I just truthfully love this card so much. It's just got a great flavor. It's so great. You never, ever, ever pay 9 mana for this card. Honestly, I'd be shocked if you paid more than like 5 mana for this card. You should be playing this card for a total of 1 mana. It costs 1 less for each creature that's on the field. And it deals 13 damage to each creature, so basically killing everything for the most part for 1 mana. To me, Blasphemous Act is just an auto-include in everything. It's such a fun board wipe. I absolutely love this card. It's just really silly. It's just like you play this, you kill all the things, and then you've got all this other mana to do whatever you want to. You know? It's so good. I love this card. The next 2 cards I am going to be talking about side by side because they're very similar, and that is Where Ancients Tread and Warstorm Surge. There are slight differences, which I will talk about. Let's first start talking about Where Ancients Tread. Now, Where Ancients Tread is 5 mana, so it's 1 mana cheaper than Warstorm Surge. However, the stipulation here is Where Ancients Tread says it has to be a creature with power 5 or greater. It does enter the battlefield under your control, and it deals 5 damage to target creature or player. So you have free reign to kill all the things or to just do 5 damage to anyone's face. So if you're playing like big dumb stuff, Where Ancients Tread is a super great inclusion in your commander deck. However, I find the majority of people instead run Warstorm Surge. My whole thing on that is I like both, but it depends on what you're playing. I have these both in Omnath, and they obviously work really well in Omnath because the tokens you get are 5/5, so you just get to do 5 damage somewhere for free, which is great. But I find most people run Warstorm. It's one more mana. However, this just says whenever any creature enters the battlefield, it does damage to its power. So they are a little bit similar. They are a little bit different in both ways. I would just outweigh and see what you're kind of trying to do. I feel like where this card particularly really shines is decks where you're playing bigger things. Not to say that this card isn't still good if you're playing like little things and maybe a lot of them, but my favorite thing to do is just play this in like bigger creatures, like dragons, for example. If you're building like a dragons deck, I think these cards work incredibly well there, and they do it to any target, which is great. So you can redirect this at planeswalkers, you could do players, you could do creatures, whatever you really need to, which is so great. I love both of these cards. Yeah, I like these both a lot. The next card is Vandal Blast. Vandal Blast only targets artifacts, so it's not going to be targeting enchantments. But honestly, that's okay for me, because to pay 5 mana to destroy every artifact that you don't control is great. I love the fact that it does say you don't control, so you don't have to worry about this hitting you. It's only 5 mana, and I feel like you'll find in so many Commander games that people are just playing so many artifacts that you're just going to want to run a Vandal Blast. Like, I feel like Vandal Blast is just never a bad card to have in your back pocket. Yeah, I really enjoy this card. I think it's very good. Okay, let's now talk about Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker, which honestly, I think Kiki-Jiki probably has like one of my favorite names of any Magic cards, because come on, like Kiki-Jiki, like that's so fun. Okay, so Kiki-Jiki does combo off with a card, for example, like Splinter Twin. Really cool thing about Kiki-Jiki, and we're actually going to talk about Splinter Twin in a second, is you can also run Zealous Conscripts, which I'm not going to really be talking about in this Commander deck, but Kiki-Jiki is one of the cards that you can do it with. I traditionally in my combo like decks, I will typically run Splinter Twin and Pestermite or Deceiver Exart. However, if you're only playing a mono red deck, you can definitely still run away with this combo and do this. If you're looking to play an infinite combo, Kiki-Jiki is definitely one of the main pieces that gets you there. There's a couple of cards that you could run with this to combo with, but I will be talking about Splinter Twin. The whole thing with this is you just have this infinite combo, and so you just tap on tap, you make all these dudes, and you just outrun and overrun and kill your opponents. Also really great because you can also play this with Purphoros as well, and then that's a way that you could do infinite damage. If, let's just say, someone has something to stop you from, like, I don't know, let's just say they have, what is that card called? Sphere of Safety, for example, and you're not able to actually get through that damage because you don't have enough mana to have all your things. Perforos, for example, synergizes with the Kiki-Jiki Splinter Twin combo, and that's one way that you can do it. And then just kind of like segueing into Splinter Twin. Yeah, I love Splinter Twin. I feel like it's such an easy combo to get off. It's only 2 pieces. Again, you can play this with a couple of other pieces, but Kiki-Jiki and Twin do, you know, synergize with themselves, and you can run those both, and you can just automatically kill the entire table, which is a lot of fun to do, and I really enjoy it. I'm not a huge combo player, I will say. I very infrequently run combos. However, this is one of the combos that I do really enjoy. And yeah, great. I love it. Okay, let's talk about this is a fairly new card. I believe this card's only ever been printed a total of 1 time, and that is Dockside Extortionist. This card is so good. So it says, when it enters the battlefield, you create X treasures, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. So think about all the artifacts and all the enchantments they control. You just get all those treasures. Like, so incredibly good. You play this, it's 2 mana. 2 mana to get all these artifacts, all these treasure tokens that you can just sack to do whatever, to play a bunch of things. Like, I feel like you can get so many dumb things off of this card. Like, you can just get like all the mana and just do so many dumb things. This card is so incredibly strong. There's a reason this card is a lot of money. It's also only been printed once, so that's part of it, but this card is such a house. I feel like you can never really go wrong with this card. Like, I feel like it's a great thing to just have on hand, because your opponents are going to be playing a ton of artifacts. Maybe not as much enchantments, but a ton of artifacts that you can just get a ton of treasure tokens with. Such a good card. Okay, let's chat about Pyroblast. This card is just really cute. Honestly, I like it. I feel like this card, if you're someone who, you know, your friends just play a ton of blue and you just want a way to stop them, Pyroblast is a really great way to do that. You can only counter spells if they're blue, but it's only 1 mana, which is great. Or you can destroy target permanent if it's blue. So mess up someone's commander, mess up someone's really threatening thing, which is so great for only 1 mana, add instant speed. I think this card is great. And I think this card, one thing I think is really cool is like a lot of times what you'll find is a blue mage might just like at the end of, let's just say your turn, they're tapping out, they're going to do their thing. And then you can, in response, you know, to them like tapping their mana, playing their thing, whatever, you can play their Pyroblast when they're tapped out to destroy whatever it is that they have on the battlefields, their commander or something else that's really threatening. So Pyroblast is a super great card. I would say, you know, it might not be useful every game, but if you have a ton of blue mages in your, you know, in your play group, I think this is a great card to include. It's only 1 mana too, which is so cool. So yeah, cool. And the last card is talking about Wheel of Fortune. And this card's just honestly really fun. It just kind of like gives everyone a sort of fresh start. Everyone discards their hands and draws 7 new cards. You might possibly be hurting yourself by doing this because you might be giving everyone, you know, a fresh new hand, but it also gives you a new hand, and it's only 3 mana, which is really cool. So I really like Wheel of Fortune. I think this card is incredibly good. I would say if you're like someone on a budget and you're like, oh my gosh, do you like, I need a Wheel of Fortune? No, I don't think you need to run out and get this card by any means, but I do think this card can reset the game in a really interesting way. I think the best case scenario to do this with is with when someone has, let's just say, a ton of cards in their hand, you can reset them back to 7, or someone draws something that's really powerful and you just need that card out of their hand. Wheel of Fortune definitely helps get you there, and it also does help you as well, because if you're like, I got nothing going on in my hand, or I have 1 card and this in my hand, or no cards, this card is the only card in my hand, you could just do this, reset yourself, give yourself 7. So yeah. And I feel like the thing too about Wheel of Fortune is, you know, a lot of people, you can kind of read the room and be really political about this card. Like, hey, I have a Wheel of Fortune. Is anyone going to stop me? You know, I noticed that you don't have a lot of cards in your hand. Like, you can be really political with this card and play it in a really timely way, which can really, you know, help your opponents out, which might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but you know, if you play Commander, you got to play the politics game, and you know, sometimes you just got to make friends, and this card can definitely help get you there. So yeah, guys, that is everything for talking about 10 red cards. I actually already have parts 2 and 3 already mapped out, but I'd really love to know in the comments below what are some of your favorite red staples, and they might make an appearance in a future part. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.